Ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Council Chambers on this beautiful May 6th. As you can tell, the gallery is full. Either we did something wrong, or you guys want to cheer for us. So hopefully we did something right, and you guys want to cheer for us, because generally when we have a full gallery, we did something wrong. So, right, members of council, you have an agenda before you. If we have a motion, please, Deputy Mayor.
Yes, Your Worship, that we approve the agenda for Monday, May the 6th, Governors and Priorities Agenda.
Okay. Administration, anything to add? Okay. Council, I'll call the question. All in favor? And that is carried. Moving on to the public input session. This is the time that we allow members of our public to address council on anything that's not on the current agenda. Is there somebody that would like to talk to council about something that's not on the agenda? Okay. Seeing none, we'll move into our presentations and delegations. Today, we're blessed with 4 presentations. The first one is 4.1, which is the Parkland Pickleheads. Gentlemen. And it's good to see you. There is a sign-up sheet. If you can sign your names in there, speak directly into the mics, just introduce who you are, and then you can start whenever you're ready. This guy.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mayor and Council. First of all, I'd like to introduce the people who are with me. This is Marcel Letourneau, our Vice President, Curtis Fald, our Director of Fundraising, and I'm Garen Jones, the President of the Parkland Pickleheads. Thank you very much for allowing us to make this presentation tonight. We want to obviously tell you a little bit about our club and some of the initiatives that we're working on. First of all, for those of you who do not know what pickleball is a paddle sport combining elements of badminton, tennis, and table tennis. It's the fastest growing sport in North America. Currently, there's about 4,000 members in Alberta in 23 different clubs. There's a wide diversity of players, from people involved in wheelchairs that are somewhat handicapped, to seniors, to children, and it's growing every day. Our current membership, in 2018, we had a membership of 283 members, which is a 93% increase over what we were in 2016 at 146 members. By age, here's our demographics. You can see that we have some players in the 70 to 79% or 79 age group, 12% of our players. 42% are in the 60 to 69 age group, 32% in the 50 and 59, and you'll see that the numbers are starting to increase in the 40 to 49s, 30 to 39s, and under 30s as well. By location, you will see by looking at this pie chart that the bulk of our members come from the Tri-region, with Spruce Grove at 47%, Stony Plain at 15%, Parkland County at 16%, which is a total of 78, almost 80% of our members, and then we have a few from Edmonton, St. Albert, Devon, and other areas as well. One of the things that we've been involved with is the discussions and the planning of the Old Town South project, which of course obviously the town is majorly involved in, and we're pleased that the town is taking steps in moving in that direction, and because it certainly could be a facility that will meet the needs of our particular club. And just to give you a little bit of information regarding pickleball, information, as far as court size is concerned, it's a required court of 20 feet by 44 feet. The recommended allowance for each court, because of the sidelines and the run back, is 34 by 64. But when you look at it at a tennis court, 4 pickleball courts will in fact fit on a tennis court. 7 months of the year we play indoors. Currently we play outdoors at Henry Singer Park in Spruce Grove, which many of you have probably been to. But 7 months of the year, because of our beautiful weather we end up trying to play indoors. And currently we do not have a dedicated facility. Many of our members play either in Stony Plain or Spruce Grove, St. Albert, or in Edmonton in the wintertime, just to try and find a place to play. This winter, just within the program that we had organized within Spruce Grove, we had 346 players playing a total of 494 hours. And with the investments that they made in playing in that facility that we use there, the schools primarily, and other facilities, they spent over $60,000 just in those 7 months. Another thing I would like to suggest to the town of Stony Plain is that they consider outdoor courts as well. I know you do have some outdoor courts now. I think the condition of them is starting to deteriorate, much like the older courts that we have in Spruce Grove. Asphalt, unfortunately, doesn't last forever in this country, and I think that, that's something that should be considered. If it's part of the Old Town South project, that would be certainly worth investigating. As you're aware, we were in a partnership and utilized the Community Facility Enhancement Program in 2016 and actually constructed 12 new courts in Spruce Grove in conjunction with the City of Spruce Grove and the Alberta government. That came to fruition, and we opened those courts in June of 2017. We feel that we're definitely a stakeholder in the community. This is one particular example. We're setting up for the Summer Smash tournament, which in the last 4 years has been the provincial championships. And it brings a lot of people into the community. And moving forward, we'd like to obviously be able to hold more tournaments, and we'd like to have an indoor facility where we could hold winter tournaments. Winter tournaments are becoming very popular. Edmonton Pickleball Club just held one this last Christmas, and it filled immediately. They had something like 260 players just within a matter of minutes fill that tournament. This is just a shot of at a tournament. We're setting up for a tournament, and you can see the people there that are there to spectate or participate in that tournament. So we're hopeful that the town of Stony Plain would look favorably upon Parkland Pickleheads being a stakeholder in perhaps the Old Town South project or some other project if the town deems that as an option to provide an indoor facility moving forth. That's as far as our presentation.
Okay. Thank you very much for your presentation, and I definitely appreciate the information and the knowledge that you guys have shared with us. Members of council, any questions and comments for clarity? Councillor Bennett.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This question is to our Community and Protective Services Department. I understood that we had pickleball in our Heritage Pavilion this past winter. Is that a different group? There seems to be a lot of different groups of pickleball players.
Your Worship, through to Councillor Bennett, certainly I'm aware of 2 pickleball organizations in our region. So we have the guys here at the table, and we have a different group that was playing out of the pavilion all winter. So there's about 8 courts there. Typically the courts were quite full for the duration of the time that they were, playing.
Councillor Lowry?
Yep.
Thank you, Your Worship. To follow up on Councillor Bennett's question through you to administration, what were the fees that were charged for the rental of the facility for pickleball?
Your worship, through to Councillor Lloyd, I'd have to confirm that with staff, but I think they were pretty nominal with respect. It was a daytime fee, so I think it was an hourly fee that we charged them on a trial basis, and after this season, we would evaluate with the club if it was viable for them to continue. So the fee was, they collected the fee and they paid just a rate to use the facility.
Okay. And as a follow-up to that, just doing the math on the information that was on the presentation, it works out to about $121 an hour in respect to the 494 hours at $60,000. Is 121, is that in and around what our current hourly rate is at the pavilion?
Again, I would have to check that with, and get back to you.
Okay.
Could I perhaps comment on that?
For sure.
The $60,000 number is a number that was spent between participants at the pavilion, participants in our program that we ran through the schools in Spruce Grove, and it also involved some participants who played at Be Active in Edmonton. So that's how that number, so when you do the math, the number doesn't necessarily jive and come out to that hourly rate. The hourly rate is substantially lower than that, but when you look at all the facilities that were utilized, those are the kind of dollars that were spent.
Okay, thank you. And then a question through your worship to our guests. You mentioned schools in Spruce Grove. Are you currently utilizing any schools in the town of Stony Plain?
No, we're not.
Can you elaborate why is that?
Well, I guess, first of all, we didn't know that there was any school time available in Stony Plain. And we utilized 3 schools primarily in Spruce Grove, mostly on the weekends because we couldn't get time during the week. And what I guess our experience has been that quite often the students have programs and so forth after school and into the evening. So it's very difficult, I guess, to find schools that are available. So, but we didn't reach out to the schools in Stony Plain.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any questions? Councillor Lori? Sorry. Councillor Matthews?
Worship, if I could just ask the question for administration, what type of surface can pickleball be played on besides asphalt?
Your worship, through to Councillor Matthews, I'm not a pickleball expert, but I would assume that the pavilion has worked out well for the club there. I would assume the court surface at the TLC, which is a rubberized surface, would probably be suitable for your sport also. And then again, a wood floor probably would be okay for that too. And then the asphalt surface that traditionally play tennis on.
Could I just follow up? Could we use recycled tires that we use at our playgrounds? Maybe if you could.
Your worship, through to Councillor Matthews, I would assume that if it was a rubber surface, it would be a consistency that would be equal to either a track or the type of surface that you would see in a rubber floor in a gymnasium. So probably would be suitable, but again, I'm not sure what the footwear is for the particular sport, so perhaps the gentleman would be a better gauge as to the types of court that are preferred and the types of court that they would probably stay away from.
Okay, good.
Well, I guess there's 2 scenarios. First of all, on an outdoor surface, you'd prefer something that is a little bit of a rough surface. And the company that we had do the courts in Spruce Grove are from Calgary, and it's a company by the name of Tomco Sports. And what they do, they apply several coats of a paint type product, which has some roughness to it so that there is some grippage, so that you're not slipping all the time. The one comment, and I don't mean this in a detrimental way at any means, but the pavilion is a cement floor surface, and from what I understand, it can be fairly slippery because you do get a buildup of dust and so forth on there, and with no grippage at all, you can slip. As far as the indoor facilities that we've primarily used, most of them are gymnasium type floor surface, used for multi-sports such as volleyball or basketball, pickleball, etc., and badminton. And it works quite well as well. You just, of course, obviously wear an indoor type shoe versus an outdoor shoe that you would wear on the outdoor surfaces.
Thank you.
Deputy Mayor?
Yes, Your Worship, and through to our guests here. Talking about the surfaces and stuff like that, I've seen you play in the pavilion, and I know you play other places, but how does the lines work? A lot of these things you mentioned have multiple sports on them. do you actually come in and put your own linings to outline your surface that you're going to be playing on?
I believe at the pavilion, and because many of the people that played at the pavilion are also members of the Parkland Pickleheads, I believe at the pavilion they did put the lines down. In most facilities that we use, the lines are put down by the facility owners. Like at the Tri-Leisure, for example, there's multiple lines used for various sports, and they differentiate by color. So it's a little bit tricky at first to get used to, okay, this is the pickleball line, this is the badminton line, and so forth. But that's normally what is done, is the facility owner provides the lineage that's required for the various court measurements.
Thank you. Interesting.
Thank you. Any questions? Good. So, gentlemen, I appreciate you taking the time. I have a question regarding the community enhancement program that you guys applied for, which you guys used with the city of Spruce Grove. What was the grant dollars from that?
The grant dollars were 50% of the total project. The total project was $198,000. So it was $89,000. The Parkland Pickleheads contributed $15,000 to that project, and the city of Spruce Grove contributed the balance.
Okay. And just another question for you gentlemen. Would you guys prefer an indoor surface or an outdoor surface?
Sorry?
Would you guys prefer an indoor surface or an outdoor surface?
We prefer both.
Just show me the money.
Our biggest need probably is for an indoor facility, as I mentioned in the presentation, because of the 7 months that we can't play outside. This year, well, this year was an extreme situation too, where it almost stretched to 8 months, but we've just started actually today playing outside because the temperatures have warmed up well enough, and it's not snowing and it's not raining, and so we're keeping our fingers crossed that we'll be able to play, continually here for a few months. But I think with the growth of the sport, communities need to look at providing facilities both indoors and outdoors. And we've had discussions with the city of Spruce Grove, and I know that I get the sense that the city of Spruce Grove is supporting the idea of the concept that you have here in Stony Plain, and they've encouraged us to meet with you, talk to you about it, show our interest level is very high. And the only reason that I'm suggesting outdoor courts as well is because of the deteriorating nature of the courts that you perhaps have now, similar to our older courts. And that if you're doing a project, you might want to incorporate an outdoor play facility at the same time as you would provide for an indoor facility with a multi-use type sports gymnasium.
Okay. So obviously you have seen the kind of conceptual design from the indoor recreational facility study.
Yes.
Will you guys be able to play pickleball in the field house that's proposed?
We could play pickleball in the field house, depending on the surface it has. One of the problems that we currently experience is that at the Tri-Leisure Center, for example, of course, they have 2 field houses. And when they're not utilizing them for soccer, indoor soccer in the wintertime, we utilize the one field, and it works very, very well. They have 6 courts on the south field. But during the wintertime, they put turf down there because they require turf for their high-level soccer players, and so they have the 2 fields, both have turf on them. And of course, we're not quite like Arizona State University where we can whip the turf out in an hour and put it back in an hour. So, once it's in there, it's got to stay in there for a few months, and then we wait. And we've been playing there for the last probably 3 weeks or so, because they've taken the turf out, and we can play on that surface, and it's a multi-use type surface.
Sure. And through your experience applying for the community enhancement grant, would a kind of recreational center that's being proposed in the Stony Plain, will that qualify for your application as a partnership?
Yes, I believe it would. As I understand, unless our new government changes the rules, but under the current program, yes. And we have I guess, a proven track record, because when we completed that project and we filed our final report with the Community Facility Enhancement Program Department, they were fine with everything. Everything was good. And so I think we have a good reputation, and we would be able to qualify for perhaps even more funds, because I know the program has 2 levels to it right now, and I think there is funds available up to $1 million under that particular program, so.
Okay, thank you. Councilor Laurie?
Through you to administration, just in respect to, we have the 4 pickleball courts at the Meridian Heights tennis courts. I'm curious in respect to our outdoor rinks with the paved surfaces. Are any of those lined for pickleball?
Your worship, through to Councilor Laurie, no. The one at Meridian is basketball. There's basketball nets there, and I believe there's basketball nets also at
West Air?
West Era. Yeah, that's correct.
Okay. Okay. Go ahead, Councilor Matthews.
Your worship, through to administration, I'm just thinking about High Park where there is the tennis courts there, but then beside it, I'm wondering if that's sufficient room. I know that there's for basketball there too, but could you not have the 3 programs working all in that one area? And are there other areas like that in the community?
Your worship, through to Councillor Matty, certainly working with the club, we can look at our outdoor facilities and look at the best use of that, keeping in mind that there are tennis players in the community that still access our facilities for tennis also. So to convert all courts strictly to one sport probably is going to create a different problem. So we would work with both groups and find what the right balance is for their development of courts here in Stony Plain.
That's good. Councilor Pletchko?
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. Through to administration again. What about the current outdoor arenas, rinks that have just a bare field to them in the summertime that are not being utilized at all? Is there an opportunity to possibly work with them to look at putting some kind of a on the ground?
Your worship, through to Councillor Paleschko, similar to Councillor Laurie's question, certainly we would look at the rinks that had asphalt, because I think the gentlemen have indicated grass might be a challenge. I'm not sure if it would be a challenge, but certainly in a wet condition, grass might not be suitable for play. But we do have 2 to 3 rinks that are asphalt that could probably work. We would just have to look at how do we put nets up and those types of things. But we're doing it at the pavilion, so probably for opportunity for us to do that at an outdoor rink.
All right. Thank you. Any other questions? Comments? Okay. Gentlemen, thank you for coming and taking the time. I urge you to continue to have those conversations with our administrative staff, as they do look after the amenities that we have. If you have not done so already, please fill out the survey that's going around regarding our recreational facilities study. So whatever you have to add to it, please do that so that we have a good sense of what our community needs and wants before we come to this table during the corporate plan to decide what's going to go in there and if we decide to go ahead with it or not. Okay. With that, thank you. I urge you to look at all the CPEC grants, please. If you can get $1 million, I'm more than happy to talk to you for anything you guys want.
Very good. Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor, Council. We appreciate the opportunity to present to you tonight.
Thank you, sir. Okay, moving on to 4.2, through our presentations, delegations, and today we have Women Building Futures here today. Good evening, it's good to see you, ladies. Again, there's a sign-up sheet if you can please sign in, and I believe you've been here before, Megan, so you know the drill.
Oh, you did? Yeah. Well, how about that? All right. Yeah, so just start with a thank you for the time this evening. We appreciate it very much. The reason that we're here tonight is first and foremost to thank you. Mayor Choi and all of you have been supporting our program now. This is year 3 of a 3-year partnership term. And I have to say, when I approached Mayor Choi that many years ago, it was the first for WBF to be working with municipalities in this way. And I really appreciate the trust he put in us, and it's been a very successful partnership. So we're here to definitely share the results of the first 2 years, and then really look hopefully to the future. We've certainly evolved over that time, so just wanted to share some of that with you as well and give the opportunity for questions. Start with introductions. So my name is Megan Bates. I've been with Women Building Futures for about 3.5 years now in the role of Manager of Industry Relations. So my role really focuses on building the right partnerships for our organization, and for us that always comes down to the women that we serve in making sure that they have not only the support financially to come through the programs, but the right employment opportunities at the end of the program. And we'll talk a little bit more about our mission and why we exist and why we do what we do in a minute.
Yeah, so Jess Thompson, I've been at Women Building Futures now for just over a year, so relatively new, and my role is Senior Advisor of Fund Development, and the intention of this role is to make sure that we are diversifying how we build partnerships so that we are sustainable regardless of, I guess, industry and government of the day. So, yeah.
She said she's still new. I've told her she's not allowed to say that anymore.
I feel like I'm learning.
So as I said, we'll kind of start just very high level who we are for those of you who don't maybe know us all that well. We are a social purpose organization. We were actually founded in the late 90s, and we were founded by a group of City of Edmonton social workers. And really the mission behind WBF was then and still is to support women who are under and unemployed or living in poverty, giving them the opportunity to train for employment and really to change their lives, and not only their lives, but their families and society along with that. So been around since 1998. What makes it very easy to talk about what we do is that we do bring together a very strong business case with a very strong social purpose that can be measured. So it certainly makes it easy to talk about. The how of what we do, there's I always talk about 5 key things that we do well. So number 1 is that education and awareness, really making sure that women know about the opportunity for them in industries where they've been typically underrepresented. So construction, maintenance, oil and gas, transportation, and really helping them see themselves build their careers in those industries. The second piece is our assessment. So we spend a lot of time getting to know women who are applying to our programs and helping them make sure that this is the right choice for them. Looking at everything from just their life readiness to academics to their understanding of the industries that they're going into. The third thing that we do well is our training. So our training is a very holistic approach. It's definitely hands-on skill building is a component, but when I always talk about what's most important is the other pieces. So it's things like soft skills training. You know, if you've never stepped foot on a construction site, it can be very different to what you're used to. So we spend a lot of time really working with our students on things like communication styles, how to take feedback, how to advocate for themselves, how to refuse unsafe work, how to identify a mentor, really everything to prepare them for that environment. We also focus on fitness and nutrition. We focus on academics. We focus on just really preparing for employment. We need that for the mission to be fulfilled. So things like resume writing, interview skills, and aligning with our employer partners for interviews at the end of our programs. So the training, as I said, it's really looking at every piece that you need to succeed in these industries and setting them up for success as best as possible. The fourth piece is really that ongoing support. So we call that the wraparound support, and that's both for our alumni and our industry partners. So we want to be sure that as challenges maybe do come up, that we're always there for the alumni to come back to. So if they're running into something maybe in this new occupation or in this new environment that they're not sure how to handle, we are absolutely there. And as we continue to work with the industry partners, what that means to us is, you know, there's a big focus on diversity currently in diversifying your workforce. But if you're not building that environment that is truly inclusive and fair, diversity can't happen without that inclusion piece. So it's working with our employer partners to really help them with that as well. And then partnership. So when I talk about partnership, as I mentioned already, it's always about our students and putting them into the right environments for success. So we're always looking for shared values. For us, that's safety, safe work environment, a fair and inclusive work environment, and organizations that really support career progression and apprenticeship. And I mentioned in the first intro as well that we combine very well the business case with the social case, so I just wanted to dig into that a little bit. The business case, we are facing a skilled trade shortage. It is absolutely happening. We have 250,000 skilled trades retiring by 2021 across Canada. So what we know is the women that we tend to serve typically are about age 20 to age 44, although we certainly have students on either side of that. And if we were to attract just 1% of women in that age group in Canada into the construction industry, we would fill 25% of that projected labor shortage. So there's a big business case there for sure. Diversity and inclusion, we absolutely touched on. I always like to say diversity is being invited to the party and inclusion is being asked to dance. So that is where that piece comes with working with our industry partners as well. The big business case for, and what I first actually approached Mayor Choi with is, you know, really the opportunity to educate local women about local training that will move them into local well-paying work. So training local women for local work and accessing that 50% of the labor market that these industries maybe typically aren't able to access.
Yeah, for sure. So the other piece of our work and why WBF is such a powerful organization is that there's that business case, but we're also having social impact. So as most folks know, women are more likely to live in poverty in Canada than men. We have a lot of women that are facing generational poverty. And so when you break that cycle, when you give a mother an opportunity to earn a living income, you change the lives of her children and her families. So the work that we're doing and the partnership that we're forming is going to be felt for generations. And we measure our impact in a lot of ways, but one way that's really impactful is that the average increase in income for women that go through our programs on their first day of hire is 157%. So that from the day they started the program to the day of hire, it's 157%. So when you're talking about how to break the cycle and how to give opportunity, this is a direct line of sight and a direct way to do it.
And then the longest program is 15 weeks.
Yeah.
So it's a pretty quick turnaround.
Absolutely.
And obviously when you're impacting women and families, you're obviously impacting community as well. I don't need to tell you that, but you know, women are able to participate in their community in a different way and register their kids in sports and all the things that it takes to be a, you know, a really involved community member. So talking about the partnership to today, so 2017 was our first year working with you. Thank you again. We partnered together on the Operator Readiness Program. So that program is actually built, or was built at that time, to really help women move into entry-level roles that would over time lead to equipment operating roles. In 2017, we graduated 16 women through that program. We had a 100% employment rate, and I'll just quickly talk about employment rate overall. So we have been consistently at 95% employment rate out of all of our programs for the last 2 years, and consistently 90% and above always for the 20 years we've been around. 86% average increase in income in that program in 2017. 2018, we had 14 graduates, again with 100% employment rate, and the increase in income jumped to 167% on average for that program. So as we said, the impact is measurable for sure. And I just mentioned the other partners on that program at the bottom there. So City of Spruce Grove, City of St. Albert, Parkland County, and then we had some industry as well. Borger Group, North Star Sharp, and Government of Alberta provided some government funding for that program as well. And this is the 2018 class, so you'll see a few familiar faces in there. We always finish our programs with an interview day in-house at our training center, and we invite the supporting partners in to really give the students that first opportunity to practice their new interview skills in a safe space. Very often we do see the students hired right from that day, which is fantastic. But you know, the really intention is to give them, as I said, that safe place to practice their new skills, get some new feedback as they continue to go out to build their new careers. Yep. Oh yeah, I can, it's all right. So really, the programs that we talked about for 2017 and 2018 was the Operator Readiness Program. When I really reflected and thought about these partnerships and how we could really increase the impact, I thought an opportunity maybe to take the support away from just one specific program and actually give us the opportunity to educate women in your region about all WBF programs so that they can really align with and make the choice that is best for them. So we're opening it up to more women our ability to actually connect with your community in a deeper way. So actually being out here, being present, getting to know, food bank and library and some of the services that potentially our applicants are using, making those connections so that we're just increasing that awareness and education circle, and then giving more women the opportunity to apply for any of our programs, and then being able to kind of measure impact by, how often were we out here? Who did we talk to? How many women did we reach? How many women from your region actually applied to programs and went through programs, and where are they working? And being able to tell that story back. We know that when we can share back those stories year over year, we build momentum. And when we can actually have people from your community that are the face of this type of partnership, then other women start to see themselves in that picture as well. And I think the other thing from that, there's always an employment piece or employment opportunity as well. And this would give you the opportunity to actually potentially employ or for us to refer from all of our Journey Women Start programs all year, which is kind of between 80 and 100 women. So when there is opportunities for any trades or operating roles directly with you, we would still be able to do that, but again, on a larger scale. So it's just kind of moving the investment dollars a little bit differently, but we really think the impact would actually be even greater.
So it would be shifting the investment dollars from supporting one program and one sponsored seat or two sponsored seats, supporting awareness of all of our programs and hopefully attracting more women into WBF and then providing more alignment and more community connection.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I always like to, when I have an opportunity to speak to anyone, talk about how you can support our mission outside of here and through your role on council, but influence. So sharing our story, I say that I knew about WBF because I've been in the nonprofit world for a long time, but we're a little bit of the region's best kept secret. The work we're doing is impactful. So if anyone here wants to talk about what we're doing, follow us on social media, let people know about the impact. Of course, there's support in the financial way through our mission, and then also employment. Employers, everybody here is very influential in their social circles. So I just want to take the opportunity to, tell our community
And I think
networks.
influencing as well, in terms of just making sure that women in your networks know about this opportunity for training. We are funded in a few different ways, as Jess mentioned. So we are very fortunate to have government funding for a large number of our, one program, but about half of our program numbers. And the rest of our programs are actually funded by sponsors and by industry directly. So, any woman can access this training. We definitely focus on supporting under and unemployed women as number one, but definitely there's the opportunity here. We see some career changers coming through. Things are evolving, things are changing, and so we really want that message to get out and that influence through your networks that this is a really wonderful opportunity for changing your life.
Yeah, so these are we've talked about a bit of these metrics, but we like to brag a bit. So this is 2017. We're just finalizing the 2018 numbers. But as Megan said, in 2017, we had a 95% employment rate, which to us means that graduates are employed in industry within 6 months of graduating our program. We had 77 employers hire graduates, 157% average increase in earned income, and then we engaged with 48 Indigenous communities. And in 2017, 34% of our grads were Indigenous women. So it's a quick snapshot of the impact that we're having, but it's pretty powerful numbers.
So I decided to share a couple of quotes with you from a couple of the students that have been through our program. So the first was our operator readiness program. Tracy graduated actually in 2016 from that program, and she went to work for Alta Steel. She is still there, and she just said, well, you can read it, but I'm able to do the things I've always wanted to do: donate to Rescue Society, start an RSP, create a plan for my future, love my job, getting really good at it, amazing place to work with lots of opportunities. I'll be retiring here. And the second is Kara, who is an iron worker, and I tell you, fierce women, these iron workers. A single mom of 3, and I actually personally met Kara just by accident through my daughter, who was training with the trainer for soccer, different story. But Kara was also there training pre-program 3 times a week to build strength to succeed in this program on her own time outside of her work, and came through the program, did amazingly well, went to work at the Sturgeon Refinery out in the NWR project. And just, yeah, it did change her life to the point that on top of this quote, she was one that will always stay with me because she sent a picture of her standing with her 3 kids in front of the first home she'd ever been able to buy as a result of this new career. So those stories are ones that we share around the office. You can imagine there's some tears sometimes, but it's something just incredible.
And Karen was
Incredibly
one of
proud.
the first women in her family to buy a home, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then a few quotes from our friends here, Mayor Choi, Mayor Houston in Spruce Grove, and Tom, just to really speak to the partnership that we've been very fortunate, as I said, to have support for a couple of years now, and just really very much appreciate that. And hope we can continue in a way that makes sense for you as well. That was it?
Yeah, I think that's.
We welcome questions.
Yeah.
Thank you much for your presentation, and thank you for sharing that with us. It's good to see what our commitment and partnership with WF has meant to women in the region. I believe we have an employee that was part of the graduate program, and I think she made the cover of your magazine as well too. So, which is very good, and the program does work.
Yeah.
Members of council, any questions or comments? Okay. Go ahead, Councillor Matthews.
Your Worship, through to our guests, first of all, thanks so much for coming tonight. Regarding so this is, obviously more physical work. You talked about some of the training that somebody would go through to do this. So as individuals, you move on, let's say if you have somebody in the upper range of your, your age group starting, how would you help them move from the trades maybe into an administrative or management position? And maybe some organizations will help people with that. But I wonder, when is there a point where another opportunity needs to be prepared for?
Yeah, it's definitely something that we think about and focus on through our ongoing support, but that also more so comes with aligning with the right employers. And when I say right employers, I mean definitely those employers who understand the opportunity for career progression and career pathing into different things. Okay. But we certainly have, women that they want to drive a Suncor haul truck, and they will do that for 25 years, and they love it. So it really depends on the individual. One of the things that we are working on building out this year is almost a second set of training that will really support women, to your point, moving into more leadership roles. So we want to make sure that, women are being given those equal opportunities, and we're helping them get to that next step. So building out with our industry partners, actually, things like leadership, project management, coaching, like different kind of modules that will assist them with that journey as well. So yeah, I mean, our whole goal, that increase in income on the first day of hire into that first job is significant, but we don't want it to end there. Perfect. So we definitely want to keep them moving forward, yeah.
Great, thanks.
Okay. Any questions, comments? Okay. Seeing none, maybe just a question. Originally, when we started this partnership, it was a 3-year commitment. And as you mentioned, that we've done through 2 years, and this 3rd year that you guys are revamping it and changing it. So having the operator readiness program will not be there this year offered. So in terms of the dollars that was in our corporate plan, you guys, the lady said you guys plan to re-earmark that for education?
Yeah, what we'd like to be able to do with it is just be able to use it to actually fund all our core operations around all of our existing programs and make sure that we can actually physically have people out here building relationships with your community more often, so that that impact actually is broader, and we're educating about all programs so that women in your region have the opportunity to train in any one of the programs that we offer. Okay. So it's moving it almost from a training sponsorship for one person to a wider impact with multiple people, multiple programs. Okay. As you mentioned, sharing the awareness of going to the food bank, the library, where clients of WPF can be found, maybe. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, exactly. So may I have a question for administration? Since through our corporate plan, we had this program that we've committed to, and this is the last year of it. Do we need to change any of that because the parameters have changed, or is this like we gave it to WF and this is what they can do with it?
Your Worship, again, I don't know that we would need to come back to council and seek specific authority, if you want to call it that, to make a change. I do believe we would want to have a further conversation and just understand, what the money would be allocated to specifically, and so on and so forth. But so I would look forward to that discussion, and but I would also move forward with an understanding that this is a well-supported program, and we've had great success both ourselves as an organization, and I know that Women Building Futures has had a lot of success over the years too. So we would open that conversation with with an intent to find a solution that works for all of us. So.
Okay. Okay, thank you very much. With that, so then definitely the door is open to have conversations with our minister staff and to see how that's going to unfold in our community. And we look forward to, I guess, your presentations throughout our community to inform the programs that Women Building Futures has and offers for our community. Right. Thank you very much.
Thanks. What did you hear? I know. Escape? Yeah, likely. Yeah.
Okay. So, Council, moving on to 4.3 of our agenda, and it is PACE, the property assess clean energy. Again, members of the EMRB were made aware of this presentation quite a few months ago, and we invited Lee to come and speak to members of our council. Good evening, sir. Again, sign in and speak directly into the mic when you're ready.
Already did that. Thank you. Thank you for allowing me to be here to present. As you said, we started at the EMRB, but this presentation hopefully has changed a little bit in the 8 months since. As I go through the presentation, there's slide numbers, so if anybody wants slide numbers, they can contact me afterwards and I'll get them to you. So the reason always comes up as to why I'm here. What it really is we'd like to get a letter similar to this one from you. This is one I got on April 29th. We're trying to get all the municipalities in the province to buy into the vision statement that we have on our website. So who are we? We're a not-for-profit group of volunteers who are advocating for the best practice PACE program to Alberta. Our organization mostly is run by Brian Scott and myself, although we have about 7 other volunteers that do odds and ends here and there. This is a pretty pompous statement, but PACE was identified back in 2009 as a top 20 world-changing idea. And the reason it was designated that way is that we have this dilemma between the economy and the planet. And of course, we've gone through that recently here in the province. We have people yelling and screaming that jobs are more important. And we have another group that says planetary survival is more important. And PACE really is the mediation tool in the middle. We bring those two parties together. So what is PACE? Property Assessed Clean Energy. It's a way to get from, I don't know, on your left, the shack on the left to the more advanced house on the right. It's an innovative financing tool. It provides 100% of the upfront costs, including fees, audit, project, the cost itself, interest, administration, and so on. It's designated for renewables and energy efficiency at the moment in the province. In other jurisdictions, it also adds other public good things like water conservation and other public good types of measures. Repayment is through an assessment on the property's tax bill, and it's over the life of the product. Of course, when you're looking at these things, there's 2 major barriers. The first one being money. So most of these projects, if it's a solar system or re-insulating the building or a new roof or new windows, it's a high upfront capital cost at the beginning, which is a showstopper. The second barrier is not so obvious, but I was a contractor for 12 years doing solar and geothermal, and this one is always the problem. People will say, what's my payback? What's my return on investment? Am I going to get my money back? What's the capital risk? And PACE overcomes this barrier as well. It blows both of the capital cost and the transferability away. And whether you believe in climate change or not, it's a solution for everybody. You might think it's a hoax, like this guy does. You might think it's a natural phenomena, like David Siegel does. Of course, he hasn't studied the Milankovitch cycles that says every 120,000 years we have an ice age. We were 8,000 years into getting colder, and then all of a sudden it got warmer. Or you could be 70% of the population and really believe that climate change is caused by human activity. It doesn't matter which one of these groups you fall into, PACE is a solution. In the USA, it's a nonpartisan issue. The states that have endorsed it and have passed legislation, they're pretty well split between Democrats and Republicans. A best practices program, like I said, is no money down, so the capital barrier is gone. Financing stays with the property on resale, like local improvement charge or school tax. So the transfer barrier is gone. Financing is repaid over the lifetime of the upgrade. So for instance, Windows is 15 years, solar system is 20 years, geothermal systems 30 years, and so on. We could go longer if we could find money for a longer period of time. There are things that last a lot longer than 30 years. The important thing is all the funding is from private investors, or at least it should be. So there's no government giveaways, no rebates, no incentives like we've been going through in the last 4 years. We've had meetings with the new government, and they like this because it is private investors. Administration is all self-funded, not through a government agency like we have now. It's voluntary for all parties, including the 342 municipalities we have in the province, and for contractors, and for building owners, and for investors. And it applies to all buildings, both retrofits and new buildings, homes, businesses, agricultural buildings, all of them. It really is a win-win-win formula. So if you have a problem, we have a solution. It creates jobs. There's no tax money. There's no more going into debt as a province because it's private money. And it saves the individual building owner money. So as I said, the eligible properties are just about everything. It's homes, it's hotels, it's retail, industrial, multifamily. And it's a whole bunch of other things other than solar. In the US, solar represents 34%, but there's new roofs, new insulation, windows, lighting, water pumps, elevators, all kinds of things that are deemed to be energy efficiency oriented. There really are two programs, and this has been one of the hardest things for us to get people to understand. The residential PACE program in the US is a tiger. We use this DNA example. One's much larger than the other. And then you have the commercial or CPACE program. So residential is just single family homes. Commercial PACE is everything else. Farm buildings, strip malls, hotels, office buildings, apartments, churches, everything else. And the reason the residential PACE is designated with a tiger is it's done 220,000 projects and close to $6 billion now. This slide needs to be updated. And we created, or they created, this is from the US, 42,000 jobs. Whereas in the commercial PACE market, they've done close to $1 billion. They're getting there. 715 million. Actually, I think the new number is about 890 million. 1,693 projects and 10,000 jobs. So the status of PACE in Alberta at the moment is Bill 10 was passed last April, so just a little over a year ago. It took us 3 years to get that bill into the legislature and passed. Unfortunately, they didn't listen to a lot of the things we had to say, so we've actually asked it to be repealed. And with the mood of the current government, we think it'll happen. It has been well short of a world-changing idea. At the moment, what happened after the regulation was passed in November is Energy Efficiency Alberta was designated as the program administrator. And we hear they're going to go away, so we don't know what's going to happen to the program. So the key changes that are needed in the legislation is it needs to be structured for private investment. At the moment, the municipality has to go and find the money, and that has never, ever worked where it's been brought into play. Also, the municipality is expected to do the administrative work. Edmonton is the first pilot program, and they had to hire 2 people. No way could that be done in a smaller municipality. And the legislation doesn't cover water conservation, radon remediation, and other public good things. These are the municipalities that have passed the resolution so far supporting us. There's 11 of them. Hinton, as I said, was the last one. We have a map on our website that shows it. I need to update it. It's not quite up to date, but we've got a lot of people that are looking at this. I am in Athabasca tomorrow as an example. So my call to action from you is to please pass a resolution agreeing with our vision. We will provide a template letter to your administration. And beyond the council's work, if you can see yourself clear, just to sign up as a private supporter on our website. We also have a crowdfunding program underway at the moment to get the legal brief done. It's going to cost us about $75,000. So here's our website. Go to there and support us if you can, and also pass the resolution. Questions?
Thank you much for your presentation, Lee. Members of council, any questions for clarity and understanding? Okay, Councilor Laurie.
Thank you, Your Worship, and thank you, Lee, for the presentation. Just going through, as I was reading the information you included in our package, and item number 13 on page 19 of our package is saying, in Alberta, it is estimated that in order to meet our climate change goals by 2030, we need to upgrade all of our buildings to the same level as the American averages. The average upgrade in the USA has been $25,000 per home and $417,000 per commercial building. In Alberta, we have approximately 1.4 million residential units and 200,000 commercial buildings.
And you don't believe me?
No, it's not that I don't believe you. My question is,
how much money is that?
No, since PACE's inception, and the stats that you've shown from 2010 to 2017 are showing in the United States 220,000 residential installations and 1,934 commercial installations. So if we have 200,000 commercial buildings and $1.4 million residential units and 11 years to meet that goal, how does PACE foresee fulfilling that need, and how does PACE foresee attaining 100% buy-in and market share from residents and business owners?
I'm the one that developed the numbers. We don't expect 100% buy-in. We expect about a 30% buy-in.
Okay.
So the numbers are average. So let's say 25,000 per house times 3. Like I happened to do my own house. I went and figured it out. I live in St. Albert. I would call it, to make my house 30% more efficient, I need to spend $82,000. So I'd cover off 3 of those. And anything built before 1970 is in the same boat.
Okay. So to follow up on that then, in order to meet our climate change goals by 2030, there are many other initiatives that need to occur on top of a PACE program within Alberta?
If you look at greenhouse gases, the split is about 20% in transportation, so cars and trucks, buses, whatever, 40% in industrial, and 40% in buildings, commercial and residential. So we're only talking about the last 40%. Yes, we need lots of money, but the money is there, believe it or not. I know it's hard for people to understand that, but we just came back from a conference. We had 12 funding companies in the U.S. Out of those 12, 8 of them want to come to Alberta, and they have between them probably in the neighborhood of $30 billion. That's just to start. The money is there, honestly. I know it looks like big numbers, but we got to get the legislation straight first. On April 11th last year, we had 4 funding companies ready to put, well, one was 200 million, 2 were 200 million each, and another one was 20 million. So 420 million on April 11th. Legislation was introduced on April 12th, and they all withdrew their money on April 13th because the legislation is so bad. We're going to correct it. We're going to get some very high-powered lawyers to tell them how to do it.
Okay, thank you.
But I need your support through a resolution that's just buy into the vision. You don't have to commit any money. Just buy into the vision, because that'll help in my negotiation with the government.
Okay. Deputy Mayor?
Yes, Your Worship, and thank you very much for the presentation. You just mentioned a few seconds ago to a question that there are companies, I think you said a dozen of them in the United States, and 7 or 8 of them are willing to come to Alberta.
There are Canadian companies too.
There
We've
are.
got Tech Invest in Edmonton, Ayrshire out of Calgary, Copar out of Toronto, and then the US ones, believe it or not, they're run by Canadians. A guy that used to be in Calgary, another guy that used to be in Toronto. Companies that most people have never heard of, like Green Fund, Greenworks, Pace Fund, Petros, Counterpoint. There's 12 of them altogether. I know the presidents personally.
Okay, thank you for that, but what is in it for them? Like, what's their incentive for any company to put $200 million into, I'll say, the PACE program?
The simple answer is it's a tax lien.
I'm sorry, the tax?
It's a tax lien, so it's the most risk-free investment in a capitalist society that you could make, because you know you're always going to get paid. That's why they're willing to put their money into it.
But 200 million is not chump change, and
Justin identified a much larger number.
but
It's
and
way
some of
bigger
these
than
money,
that.
these fee things can go out over 30 years. What is the return on their investment?
The interest rates that they're getting in the US are anywhere between 3 and 7%, depending on the project. I met the president, just to give you an example, I met the president of Manulife. They're one of the big funding companies in the US that put money into PACE. They take 15% of the monthly premiums that they get from life insurance policies, and it all goes into PACE. It sort of goes there automatically every month. And I ask him why he does that. And he says, we get so much money coming in every month that we've got to have something where we know we can at least not have to worry about part of it. And that's the least worrisome place you can put, is a PACE loan that has a tax lien.
They obviously didn't think of reducing the fees for their clients. It's just a question, you know, I mean, that's a lot of money to have people, and I don't understand. They always say follow the money, and I'm having a bit of a time following the money, so.
We'll go for lunch. I'll explain it in more detail.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor, and I appreciate the question, because one of the questions I have is also the rate of return for the investors. As an investor, I want to know what my rate of return. So you mentioned that between 3 to 5%. But I do have a couple questions based on the information that you provided. On number 6 of the information that you provided in the package, you said there has been 5 other PACE or PACE-like initiatives attempted in Canada: Toronto, Halifax, Vancouver, the province of Quebec, and the province of Nova Scotia. In all cases, they fell well short of expectations. So is that the case here in Alberta as well, that this PACE Alberta is going to fall well short of expectations?
It's an opinion on my part. And my opinion is yes, it's going to fall apart, because they didn't do it the way it should have been done. The way it should have been done is according to our vision statement, which is what I'm asking you to pass.
Okay.
And the new government seems to want to follow what we're saying, so hopefully we'll get it.
Okay, Deputy Mayor?
Yes, Your Worship. Thank you for bringing that up. And so to piggyback off the mayor's question there, so all these other places in Canada, and these are just the only ones like Toronto, Halifax?
There's only 2 active ones at the moment, Toronto and Halifax.
And
Vancouver shut theirs down after doing 15 projects. The Nova Scotia one is, they've done like probably maybe under 100 projects in the last 5 years. And when you look at the numbers that I've presented, we need to do 1.4 million in 11 years. So, I don't count them.
Okay, so the 2 successful,
No, none of them are successful.
none are successful.
None are successful,
So-
in my mind.
And
400 projects in 5 years compared to 220,000 in the US, I don't count that as successful.
so why weren't they successful? Did all these municipalities not adopt what you, and I'll say Alberta is one of them, did not adopt your philosophy? Or is that the right word, your legislation?
Right. And even some of the ones in the US are not,
States,
pardon?
excuse me.
Even some of the ones in the US aren't successful because they, out of the gate, they had, like New York State as an example, it languished for 7 years up until about 8 months ago. They rewrote their legislation all over again and finally got it right.
So I would look at that as a major hurdle is either existing legislation
That's why we're repealing it, I hope.
in all the Canadian municipalities. How much does the successful ones in the United States, how do they differ from the unsuccessful ones in Canada?
They allow private investors. The administration is done outside of the municipality by a PACE administrator that gets paid they have a 0.1% fee that they take out of all the money that flows through. And they cover things other than renewable energy, which is really just 3 or 4 things. Like the Halifax program only covers solar. It doesn't cover geothermal, doesn't cover cogen, doesn't cover insulation, windows, roofs, doors. There's over 54 products that should be allowed under the program.
Just one further, and I'm not going to belabor this. Are there any lenders of money, as in, let's say, the Rockefeller Institute and those that are like that, as financial backers to these groups?
The ones that I'm familiar with don't get their money from the Rockefeller Foundation.
Or similar foundations?
No, they're all private. Like Ayrshire out of Calgary's private. I don't know if you're familiar with them or not. They have a lot of money. Same with Tech Invest here out of Edmonton.
Okay.
Thank
Councilor
you,
Mattis?
sir.
Councilor Mattis?
Through to our guest, thank you for coming today. My question is with regards to, if we give me a BC example of what specifically happened, what the process was, and why it failed. So I know you've talked in generalities about the funding, this and that. So what did a household have to do to obtain money, and then what was the process of repaying, and who was involved? And I understand what you're kind of generally talking about with regards to the US, but specifically what happened here.
In Vancouver?
Yeah.
They required an audit.
Pardon?
They required an audit on every house.
Okay.
In the US, the residential program that most of the states run, it's a 15-minute approval process. So when you throw an audit in the mix, contractors won't promote the program because it'll take 3 months to get an approval.
An audit of what exactly?
How energy efficient the upgrade is going to be.
Okay.
So you're going to make the house 5% more efficient, 10% more efficient, 50% more efficient. That takes a lot of effort and a lot of engineering time.
Okay.
And most contractors that are promoting the program won't wait that long.
So it
So they
failed
don't
because of
promote
that
it,
reason
it
then?
won't happen.
It failed because of that reason?
That's the main reason in BC, yeah. You asked me specifically about BC, so that's
Okay.
what happened there.
Okay,
And I know the
and-
guy that was running the program for the city of Vancouver, and when I explained to him what we're trying to do, he said, yeah, that's PACE. What we did was not PACE. It's PACE-like.
Okay, so I'm just going to piggyback on that question that Councillor Mattis asked. She asked about why it failed in BC, and you said they required an audit. But doesn't that make sense to have an audit if one of your points is that for Alberta to meet our estimated climate change goals by 2030, we need to have all these buildings reduce their carbon footprint. So if we don't know what they're reducing, then are we actually achieving the goal?
There's two ways to do it. Micromanage it, and you'll get 400 projects in 5 years, or macromanage it and get 150,000 in 5 years. Macromanage, you can actually take a house and say, if I add this many square inches of triple pane window, it'll make the house that much more efficient. And then just do it on a global macro basis instead of trying to micromanage each individual project and figure out in detail that you're, whether it's 21% or 23%, it doesn't matter. Just get on with the job. Do volume versus onesies and twosies.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Pletcho.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship, through to our guest. So I'm having a hard time wrapping my head around this one. Explain to me, does PACE have certain contractors that they have pre-approved that will do this work? Can any contractor do this? Who comes into my home that tells me what I need to have done?
Contractors have to be approved before they're part of the program in every jurisdiction, even the one we've got here in Alberta. And that makes sense. I mean, you're not going to just let anybody, I mean, any contractor can do it, but they got to go through a vetting process. They got to present their credentials. They got to, make sure that they check out on they haven't gone into bankruptcy, whatever. I mean, there's a whole process to go through to vet every contractor that's part of the program. And that becomes, once a programmer is, once a contractor is vetted, it becomes a marketing tool for his company because he can now show up, you phone up and you need a new furnace in the middle of the winter, and you happen to phone up a PACE certified contractor. He comes out to your site and said, well, I can replace your new furnace, put in a like-for-like furnace for $8,000, and you'll need to pay me as soon as I'm done. Or I can put in a 98% efficient furnace, and you won't have to pay me anything down, but it'll go on your property tax bill. Most people will go for the latter.
Okay,
He
so
has to
again,
be approved, and he has to know how to market it, and that's part of the training that they go through when they become a vetted contractor.
So the product that's going out to the vetted contractor, is that a specific product that only PACE approves, and will all homes get the same product put into it?
No. There's a whole list of, furnaces. There's probably 80 or 90 different models.
So the homeowner then has a choice,
Absolutely.
cost-wise, as to what that is?
Absolutely.
Okay.
You're talking residential now, so you're talking our PACE. Commercial PACE is a completely different kettle of fish. It is a 3 to 6 month approval process, and it's all done by engineers. And they can put in any product that the engineer can spec any product he wants, but he takes the liability. On the residential market, you have to have a proper consumer protection system in place, and that's part of what we have, a 50-page manual all ready to go for that.
Okay.
We gave it to the government, they didn't read it.
Thank you. Councillor Meyer, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you, this might be for administration, or it might be for you, Mr. Lee. Page 16, number 7.
I should have brought it with me.
Oh,
You'll have to
I'll
read it to
I'll read
me.
it for you. In the event of payment default or foreclosure, the outstanding PACE financing balance does not become due and payable, only the outstanding payments. So my question is, if it's run through the tax and it's a payroll, or not a payroll, sorry.
It's a tax lien, so it's like every other
lien.
tax
Okay,
lien.
so who becomes liable for the remainder of the payment?
Whoever buys the house or whoever buys the building. Just like, think of it similar to a local improvement charge where, you have a block of houses with 12 homes and everybody got new sidewalks and it got apportioned out for the next 25 years. So whoever's living in the house is making the payments, and when they sell the house, the next person continues making the payments. Works the same way.
Okay. Councilor Laurie?
Thank you, Your Worship. To follow Councillor Meyer's comments, there's two questions that I have on this, and first is, do homeowners have to go through any type of a financial approval process to have whatever the value be added on to their assessment? And the reason I ask, you had stated approximately $80,000 for your home over a 30-year period of time. That's an extra $2,600 a year. Somebody may have at one point in time qualified for homeownership, but may not be in a position to qualify for additional financing or additional debenture payments. So is there a financial approval process for somebody to take advantage of a PACE program?
Simple answer is yes.
Okay.
Different jurisdictions have different ways of doing it. Probably the most liberal one that I heard of is New York City. They limit the amount that you can get to 30% of the assessed value.
Okay. So that would be up to the municipality then?
No, it's up to the program administrator to make sure that if that's what the rule is, to enforce the rule.
But that's what I'm stating. There is nothing within the PACE program, so it would be up to the municipality to set some type of control,
No.
which the PACE administrator would then...
No, it'll be part of the provincial program, whatever the PACE legislation says.
Okay. And
It would be in the regulation.
what does the current legislation say in respect to that?
Nothing.
Nothing. Okay.
Part of the problem.
And so for the second portion of my question then, through your worship, this then means that it's up to the municipality to collect and then remit to
There's
PACE?
two small tasks they have to do. The PACE administrator presents them with a piece of paper with the legal description of the property and the amount of money that has to be placed as a lien. So they have to place the lien based on that piece of paper. And then you are correct. Like school taxes every year, you're told what to collect. You dutifully collect it, get nothing for it, and then forward that money to the school board. So in our case, we would pay you maybe $30 a bill or whatever, some fee.
Okay.
But at least you'd get something.
Okay.
But you do have to collect and forward the money, just like you do with school taxes.
Thank you.
Boy, I'm glad I knew to answer most of
Go ahead,
these.
Councilor Deputy Mayor.
One quick question. Everybody's on board, let's say, and we're running the Alberta program. And we got these companies, 7 of them, they all give $100,000 or $100 million. Where does that $700 million sit?
You mean the investment money, or
Yes.
where does it come from in the first place?
No, you mentioned 7 companies that are willing to give substantial amounts of money.
Right?
They do. Alberta's up and running, everything's kosher. You get 7 companies on board and at a hypothetical 100 million. Where does that money sit to be taken out, or if I missed
Well,
something?
typically the way it works is, let's say you're a homeowner. Let's go our pace. You find a contractor and you want to get all your outside. Well, let's make it real simple. You want to get your insulation and your roof done. So you go out and you find a contractor that's approved. He gives you a quote. You might get, in fact, I think you're required to get 3 quotes as part of the program. So you pick, it's up to you, you make the pick, and the amount of money is whatever, $40,000 to re-insulate your whole attic. That money then is, it goes out for bid, so to speak, to whoever they call them PACE originators. They're people that originate the money. They're the ones with the money. So here's a $40,000 project, you bid on it at whatever interest rate you feel is attractive to you. And then that $40,000 is provided, it goes through the PACE administrator to the contractor.
Okay.
At the same time, there's a tax lien for $40,000 put on your property with a repayment schedule for whatever it is. Insulation's 30 years.
And nobody bids on the project?
Pardon?
What happens if nobody bids on the project?
I've never seen that happen.
Okay. Thank you, Your Worship. No more questions from me.
Thank you. So thank you for your presentation, Lee. And you mentioned that you're going to be asking the provincial government to repeal Bill 10.
Yes.
Because it is inaccurate, doesn't work properly.
We hope to send that out on Monday.
If that does happen, how many months would that, do you predict that will take the provincial government to repeal? And then after that, how many months before would the new government introduce a new bill to have it pass all 3 readings before it becomes actual law?
We think we can get it done for the fall sitting.
So
we have, to do it properly, you need to get all the stakeholders in a room. So you need municipalities, investors, realtors, contractors, commercial contractors, associations. There's 17 groups that we've identified. We need to get them all in a big room, work it all through, and cover off everybody's concerns. Because this is an ecosystem. It's not just one, it's not just homeowners, it's not just municipalities, it's all of these different groups that need to have their issues covered off. Get them all together in one room and cover them all off, and then write the proper legislation to meet all other needs, or as best as you can. Of course, everybody's not going to be perfectly happy, but
okay.
Does that help?
It does. Councilor Matthews?
I have one last question for you. So if there's 300 million people living in the United States, I'm not sure how many households there are, I didn't Google that, but there's 220,000 households that you've done work for. What percentage of that is that of that population?
They're growing at about 180% year over year right now.
Yeah, well, that's 180% of zero is zero, right? So what percentage of the households in the...
I'll send you the spreadsheet.
I'd like to know, yeah, but you don't know that.
I've worked it out, yeah.
It sounds to me like a very small program in the United States.
It's growing very, very fast. And that's the way it should be if we're going to meet our climate change target. And we have to do the same thing here. It's got to grow fast. It can't grow slow. I have another presentation that's much longer, but when the automobile was presented in the early 1900s, I have a picture of New York Fifth Avenue where there was one car on the street on Easter. 13 years later, there was one horse. You can change things in a hurry if everybody gets on the same page. I know, it's mind-boggling.
Councilor Pletchko.
But you've got to start.
So one further question, when it comes to the funding of the project and you base it over a 30-year period, is that interest rate that's applied at that time based on what the lender has decided? So is it a 3 or 7% interest, and is that for the full term?
Yes.
It's not recalculated anywhere in a shorter term?
There are some lenders that want a renewable every 5 years, but there's only one out of the 12 that I know of that have done that. All the rest are for the full term.
Okay, thank you.
And that would be up to you to choose that if you were the building owner. You know, do you want to take a chance or you want to be locked in?
Okay. So Lee, so you mentioned about the tax lien. So who actually applies that tax lien on that property?
He does.
So you're
Your
asking,
administration has to, they're given a piece of paper that shows you, like I said, the property description, the property address, and the amount of money and who the lender is and at what rate. And you basically just, whatever your process is to place a lien, tax lien.
okay, so then that's more than the two simple steps that you mentioned earlier. So there's 3 steps.
Well, that's one step. The other step is
To
collect
collect.
and remit.
And then third
That's-
step is to-
Okay, 3 steps.
And to remit.
But you don't have to go find you don't have to approve the contractors, you don't have to find the investors, you don't have to administer the program. You know, all the heavy lifting should be done by the PACE administrator. And we're actually proposing that there be multiple administrators for the province, not just one, like maybe 2 or 3, so that there's competition.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you very much for your presentation. I heard a lot of numbers here, and this is something that the council will have to kind of weigh over and kind of discuss in a little further detail. I'm concerned about some of the numbers that you presented. You presented that there might be a fee for the municipality to initiate this, and it was $30 per household that was involved. So,
I just threw that out.
okay, but I'm just
You
using
tell
numbers.
me what you want.
Well, I'm going to tell you right now, because based on your numbers of $30 per household, if you have 7,000 residential units in town of Stony and Plain, that's only $210,000 a year.
Isn't
Right,
it all,
which-
if you
which is-
have the
which
right
is-
software, you don't have to do anything.
Which is very, very, very little. However, I like the fact that you mentioned earlier about a 0.1%.
That's for the PACE administrator.
Okay, well, then maybe there should be a 0.1% to the municipality. Because based
Okay,
on your
that's what
same
you
math, you said you're hoping that there would be only a 20% uptake and not 100%. Right, so if I use the numbers of 7,000 units, and at 20%, which is 2,000 units within a municipality, and if we use $82,000 as the overall cost to upgrade and retrofit your home, that should have an investment dollars of $164 million. If the town of Stony Plain got 0.01% of that, that's $1.6 million per year. And I'd be more than happy to have staff initiate that program at $1.6 million.
Okay, when we put the stakeholders meeting together, you can come and put that on the table and see how it goes over.
Yes, I think that works well, because I think when you presented at the EMRB, I asked the question again, what do municipalities get? Because again, our staff are taxed with doing a lot of other things. If we add something else to them, we need to bring in more people. You mentioned the city of Edmonton hired 2 people to look at this pilot program. So that there has to be an
They have
offset. 'cause it
2
can't go
just
into
to
the tax base.
administer it, and then they've got 2 lawyers and an accountant and a whole bunch of other people that are also involved at this point.
Okay, so there's a lot more than 2 people. So the cost of that is more than just a simple tax lien collect
No,
and send.
that's if there isn't a PACE administrator. They're doing all the administration. They've had to go out and find the investors. They've had to go through and vet all the contractors. They've had to vet all the products. You know, you do all of that work, and it's going to cost money. And then the municipality right next door has to do exactly the same thing. It doesn't make sense. Economies of scale will kick in if you have, you know, 3 administrators, let's say, for the province, and they're competitive.
Okay. Thank you for your presentation there. You gave council a lot to digest and to consider and think about.
I'm not asking you to buy in and pass an enabling bylaw. All I'm asking you to do is look at the vision
Yeah.
and
Okay.
buy into the vision.
Okay, so you said that you'll provide a kind of a template letter of support. So if you can send that to administration so that council can have a look at it.
May have
before we-
already done it, actually. I don't know. Yeah, she's shaking her head. Yes, I did.
Okay.
Sometimes I do, sometimes I don't. So they've got it already.
Okay, that's fine, because on your presentation you said you would forward that, so that's why I'm just double checking. Thank you very much for your time, Lee, and good luck on your presentation in, I believe you said Athabasca?
Tomorrow night, yeah.
Okay, good luck with that as well, and hopefully this gets sorted out and we can move forward to reducing environmental footprint in our communities.
Thank you.
Thank you. Do we need a recess? Yes. Ladies and gentlemen, it is 7:30. Let's just take a 5-minute recess before we come. I do apologize to members of the task force. I said 6:45 you guys were presenting, and I am way off that, so I apologize. So 5-minute recess, then we'll be back. Programming. We're back to presentations and delegations. 4.4 that is for the Mayor's Task Force presentation. So, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Council again. You guys are doing it, so you guys are signing in and speak directly into the mic for it to carry.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I appreciate you allowing us to be here tonight. We're here to give our report for the Mayor's Task Force, Community and Engagement Volunteerism Report. Many communities in Alberta and Canada are noticing a shift in the amount and type of volunteerism. Citizen knowledge and engagement with their local governments is also thought to be shifting. Mayor and Council want to ensure that the strategic foundation of community development is maintained and strengthened. To that end, the Mayor's Task Force was created with a review for the current and potential future state of volunteerism and community engagement in Stony Plain. There were 20 applications for individuals interested in filling 8 seats available stated in the terms of reference. The following people were selected: John McCaffrey, Kelly Florado, Russ Graff, Lori Feist, Mackenzie Blackburn, Diane Duncan, Dave Neumar, Jim Clark. Sadly, we had to say goodbye to Jim after his battle with cancer at the beginning of this year. Our hearts and thoughts continue to be with Jim's family. Kelly and I are now going to go through some of the highlights of our report. The overall objective of our mandate is to provide council with recommendations and strategic advice with which the town of Stony Plain can develop policies pertaining to the development of community volunteerism and engagement of knowledgeable citizens in Stony Plain. The study requires our group to answer the following questions. Is the volunteer aspect of Stony Plain shifting? Are there practical and simple steps for the community to take in order to maintain a strong sense of volunteerism? Are there practical and simple steps for the community to take in order to foster knowledgeable citizens? Over the past several months, our team has met every 2 weeks to collect feedback, dissect issues, and present ideas in order to answer the questions listed in our terms of reference. Our goal was to analyze the past, present, and future states of community organizations and the levels of social engagement within the town of Stony Plain. Okay. Community organization were defined as any service clubs, religious applications, charities, sporting associations, and multiple programs and services within our area. The Community Scan Volunteer Fair, the initial research began with several task force members attending the Tri-Municipal Fair on September 19, 2018. The Heritage Pavilion was to speak to organizations and members of the public in the Tri-Municipal area to gain a better understanding on the current state of volunteerism and engagement in our community. Some of the highlights of the survey were almost 50% of the attendees advised that the reason for not volunteering is the lack of time. 23% of the attendees had never been a volunteer. The types of volunteer that work the best were most interested in the group surveyed were charity and health related. Our research suggested that one of the main reasons individuals are not volunteering regularly is due to the time constraints. We live in a day and age where people are busy and women are working more significantly than in the past. 1953, there was 24% of women, whereas in 2014, 82% of the women were working. We now live in a day and age where people are busier and women are working more than ever. Oh, where did I just go? All right. Is this the right one? Yep. After speaking with some organizations present at the volunteer fair, it was evident that certain groups are desperate in need of volunteers while others have waiting lists of volunteers. Most respondents stated that most interested in volunteering for charities or health-related organizations. Community members volunteer for organizations and events that have meaning to them or on a personal level. For example, individuals have a passion for animals, they are most interested in volunteering time at shelters and rescues. Other family members or loved ones who have suffered from a medical condition in which they prefer to become involved with organizations which support medical care, research for illness. Next, we did a survey that was sent to organizations and volunteer agencies to allow our task force a better understanding on volunteerism climate in our community from the eyes of our organizations. Some of the highlights from the survey were almost 80% of the organizations have seen a shift in volunteer rates over the past several years. Almost 53% of the respondents stated that volunteers are mostly made up of the baby boomer generation 55 plus. 47% of the respondents do not utilize municipal services, including local FCSS, Family and Community Support Services. The results of this survey indicated there has been a significant change in volunteerism rates over the past several years. Under just half of the respondents reported that volunteer rates have increased rather than decreased. Some respondents noted that social media has allowed the increase of volunteers as it is a quick and easy channel to promote the needs of their organizations. Other respondents expressed concerns over volunteer aging out and finding it difficult to access the younger generation. There are more resources available to organizations and volunteers more now than ever. However, bringing awareness to these resources, there was a challenge that lies. With 47% respondents not utilizing municipal services such as FCSS, it's obvious that the root of the problem is derived from the lack of awareness. Many organizations are uniformed of the extremely beneficial services Stony Plain FCSS can provide. You can read more about this in our report.
Great. So throughout the past several months, our team had the privilege of meeting with several strong community representatives who range from volunteer coordinators to church pastors. We wanted to hear their perspectives and opinions on volunteerism and community engagement. So in October, we met with Brenda Reeve from the Tri-Community Health and Wellness Foundation, and she informed us that their volunteer base has decreased over the past several years with the aging of baby boomers. Her organization recently decided to cancel one of their biggest events, the Festival of Trees, due to diminished community attendance and the large number of volunteer hours required to run the event. But while that ended, they actually implemented a new initiative such as the Tim Hortons Smile Cookies, which has been wildly successful due to proper marketing techniques and providing volunteers with a clear vision of their purpose. So what we learned from Brenda was that we have to be willing to change our events and our fundraising that the community will be excited to participate in. So that's what we learned from Brenda. Then we had a chat with Jesse Martineau in October, who provided us with a thorough understanding of the importance of storytelling. So he believes that if you're able to tell your story in a thoughtful and engaging way, people will engage. So some organizations struggle to express their stories to the public, and social media has proven to be a very strong source of information source in our community. So, and if our organizations want to promote their events more effectively, they need to have better connections with the new generation of volunteers. So in April, we also met with Brett Eslinger, right, who is a pastor at the new successful local church, Engaged City Church. So he has experienced an overwhelming support with his congregation, and he believes it's because of a number of reasons. One is because they provide clear pathways. So they provide on and off ramps. They don't expect their volunteers to commit long term. They expect them to volunteer on their own schedules without feeling trapped to some sort of a long-term obligation. He also believes that some events have a shelf life and that we shouldn't be sad when they've run their course. So it's okay when some events are ending and we have new ones that, that the community gets more engaged in. Then we also met with the Stony Plain FCSS Director, Lisa Gilchrist, and Volunteer Coordinator Diane Dubé in October and February. And we were made aware of the abundance of services that FCSS provides for our community. But we were surprised to learn about all their programs and initiatives that they organize. So Diane showed statistically, volunteerism has not decreased over the past several years. However, priorities have changed. So young families tend to volunteer with their family's sporting or their school activities. And Diane believes that some of the following are issues that organizations are facing with regards to volunteerism. Basically, the same 10 volunteers are doing majority of the work. Organizations have many aging volunteers. Youth usually prefer to volunteer with their peers, so if we want to get them more involved, we need to allow them to have their peers involved. Many people are looking for group volunteering opportunities, and many organizations can't provide that. Many organizations want long-term volunteers, however, many volunteers are looking for short-term opportunities. So we learned from her that FCSS has developed great relationships with some external partners over the past several years to collaborate and work towards this common goal. So in our report, you'll see that we've listed a number of organizations that they've developed a great relationship with. So in our research, we've learned that successful communication equals successful community engagement. Which leads us to our next thing that we'd love to talk about. We learned that communication is one of the most important factors to form a great volunteerism base and build community engagement. Clear communication on all organizational levels is crucial for success. Whether we communicate using signage on the streets, or newspapers, radio, TV, word of mouth, or social media, we must rely on all communication platforms to get the word out. Whether the group needs volunteers, or they need help spreading word about their event, or simply just engaging the community, we can't forget to use any of the platforms. They must still all be utilized. So what was also very surprising to the task force, though, was that with all of these many forms of communication available, and our town is very proficient in actually using the social media platform and the other traditional platforms, we felt like we still didn't know as much as we should know about our community, and especially when it came to the services that FCSS provides. So we asked our guest speakers which methods of communication works best for them. Brett believes we have to continue to do it all, although social media is the most cost-effective. So along with talking about volunteerism, we also talked, of course, about community engagement. So the one question we had is, do we have good community engagement? Because on one hand, we're hearing that some of our events have to be canceled, like the Festival of Trees, or one of the choir events that one of our churches holds. And yet other events are having incredible engagement. For example, our New Year's Eve Family Fest. Last year was 1,500 attendees, and this past year we had 3,000. So it was a double increase. We also started the Neighbors Meeting Neighbors Community Supper. First month, 75 people. The second month, 300 people. So there's awesome engagement. So we have to realize that we have to continue to collaborate and promote current and future events. And then we believe that the town will continue to foster stronger levels of community engagement. So we have to continue developing really strong relationships, whether it's with the town, whether it's with FCSF, whether it's with the Rotary, the Kinsmen, the Lions, the Service Club, the churches. We all have to collaborate and work together. So that leads us now to our recommendations. So we strongly recommend that for 2019, we implement a Neighbor Day. How Neighbor Day started was, it was an initiative developed by the City of Calgary after the traumatic floods in 2013. And what they wanted to do was bring their community together and have fun, work together, meet your neighbors, and just have an event that it benefited the entire community. And when you look on their social media, you'll see that they're still engaging every year with their Neighbor Day. So we believe that for September 2019, we should implement a Neighbor Day for the town of Stony Plain. And we believe that this will facilitate connection between our neighbors, it will increase neighborhood safety, it will promote awareness of community services and events. Our second recommendation is an ambassador program. And this program is similar to a program developed by the City of Edmonton. And in this program, it's an ongoing program where we get a strong group of volunteers who are willing to act as community connectors to our residents and our organization. The ambassadors will attend events such as summer sessions and Neighbor Day to build relationships with locals and bring awareness to the programs and services offered by the town of Stony Plain. And this will be a long-term, ongoing program. So it's not something like Neighbor Day is going to be a one-day event, whereas the ambassador program is going to be where we're going to collaborate with all the different service groups, the churches, FCSS, the town, and local residents who can get together and participate in different events and get the word out there as to what we're doing. Finally, our third recommendation is with FCSS. So as noted in this report, it is evident that FCSS provides a number of very valuable services that many residents and organizations are unaware of. So as set in their annual report, FCSS strategic goals include increased public awareness of its services. Through our research, it is apparent that the general public knowledge of the programs and services offered by FCSS should continue to be a high priority. There tends to be a gap of knowledge between those currently utilizing their services and those that could support them. So highlighting initiatives by focusing on storytelling through their social media is something that we believe will bring awareness to programs and services offered. Which leads us to the conclusion of the report. The Mayor's Task Force spent a significant amount of time discussing current issues related to volunteerism and citizen engagement in our community. After conducting a community scan via surveys, research, and open conversation, our team discovered that there is no single resolution to the issues at hand. However, there are innovative tools and tactics recommended to continue our town's path to success. We live in a world that is highly dependent on technology, which takes away from genuine face-to-face conversations. So in addition to social barriers, residents experience a variety of other hurdles, including time constraints and seasonal barriers that keep us from meeting our neighbors. We believe that Neighbor Day is that initiative that will help connect residents and build more community engagement. Ambassadors will play a key role to help plan, initiate, and communicate town programs. They will focus on spreading the word through in-person conversations at local events. And they will spread information on the many benefits of being engaged in our awesome community. So the town of Stony Plain, along with FCSS, provides a significant amount of resources to connect, educate, and support residents and organizations in the tri-municipal area. Bringing awareness to those initiatives allows for increased involvement and knowledge from citizens and community organizations. So we believe stronger communication is required between FCSS, the town, service club, churches, and community members in order to keep us a thriving and engaged community. We recommend that the town of Stony Plain, along with FCSS, focus on citizen engagement. We believe the town is proficiently communicating our events, volunteerism, and community engagement, but we find there are still areas that require more attention. With implementation of the aforementioned recommendation, the task force believes the town of Stony Plain will be able to continue a progressive road towards a more engaged citizen and active volunteers. And I want to say, this is behalf of myself and also the task force, I believe it all starts with awesome leadership. And I want to say that we have an amazing council here. Even just as far as on Saturday, I'm a member of the Lions Club, and we had our hot dog roast, which is the first time we've ever done it to support the dog walk that we do at the end of May, and we had it at the Umbach Dog Park. And I was so incredibly impressed to see that we had 4 council members show up at our event. And so to me, that shows that we have strong leadership. We have a great council that wants to have incredible, community engagement. And so I want to thank you on behalf of the Lions Club for showing up. And I want to thank you on behalf of the Mayor's Task Force, because it's been an incredible honor for all of us to be a part of this committee. And I know we are all, very honored to be a part of it.
The Mayor's Task Force would like to dedicate this report to a man who has shown immense passion for his family, his profession, and his community. He is a man who we had considered to be not only a wealth of knowledge and a mentor, but a true friend. We would like to dedicate this report to Mr. Jim Clark. You are missed, greatly missed. There are some people who bring a light so great into the world that even after they have gone, the light remains. Author unknown.
That's great.
So now we'd like to open it to questions. If you have any questions, we're happy to answer them.
Good. Thank you much for your presentation. Definitely thank you for the work over several months that we've actually been meeting to get a sense and scope of volunteerism and the community engagement in our communities. So, members of council, any questions for clarity or understanding of the report? Councilor Laurie?
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you to our guests, first and foremost, thank you very much for your engagement on this. It's fantastic to see the report come to us. There's a ton of information in here, and I do have some questions for you, so I hope I can get a few of them answered so to get a bit of a better vision. To start off, in the community scan, you touched on women in the workplace and the amount, the large increase in women in the workplace that has occurred, and it seems to lead to stating that's a portion of why volunteerism has decreased. I'm just wondering if through the scan, were you able to determine approximate percentage split of volunteers, male and female?
No, we weren't.
Okay, no worries, thank you. And then second, in respect to the volunteer groups, you talked about engaging the groups within the community. How many of those groups, or what percentage of those groups would you say, though, aren't necessarily restricted to Stony Plain? That either exist as a regional group or are groups that have volunteers from Spruce Grove, Parkland County, other areas, or were all of the groups engaged strictly 100% Stony Plain?
You want to talk about that? Mackenzie, you want to come and talk about that? Because you were one of the ones that put the agency survey together. Would you like to answer to that?
Councilor Bennett can answer it as well.
Thank you. Maybe Mackenzie has something to order. So our community scan was mostly done at the volunteer fair that happened in September. And so whoever came to that volunteer fair, that's who we surveyed and talked to. So I don't think we specifically zeroed in on where are you from, what organization do you represent. It was mostly, and that volunteer fair, as far as I know, and maybe Lisa can clarify this, but as far as I know, that's a tri-municipal initiative, and so we encourage people from the whole tri-region to have their booths there and to attend. So I don't think that we could specifically say which ones are Stony, which ones are Spruce. It was a combination of all.
Sure, appreciate that. One follow-up on that one, and then I'll see if anybody else has anything. Do we have any idea if anything similar or any programs exist currently in Spruce Grove and Parkland County in respect to volunteerism and increasing volunteerism?
We're not aware of any programs in either Spruce or Stone or Parkland County.
Okay, thank you.
We do know that FCSS has a volunteer coordinator. Yeah. And as far as I know, the town of Stony Plain also has a volunteer coordinator, right? No, it's just that FCS has a volunteer coordinator. Mm-hmm. But what we're finding is that not enough agencies are utilizing their services. Mm-hmm. So we believe that we need some more awareness around what FCS is doing so that other organizations can use their services in a bigger way.
For sure. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, members of council. Deputy Mayor.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship, and thanks to the committee for your report and your fellow committee members sitting there in the gallery. I like the idea of you people incorporating FCSS. I But how are you going to do that? How are you going to get their services and what they do, et cetera, out to the public? They're not a new organization. They've been around for a long, long time. So I'm curious to see what your plan is for that.
What we found interesting in our group, 8 members of the community at large, and with Judy's help, we actually gained an understanding of what FCSS does. And so the more we researched into, we understood that FCSS is providing many of these opportunities to attract volunteerism and help the community at large. And so from a conclusion point of view, we just wanted to further the emphasis on the communication about the valuable services that FCSS provided, and not for us to enter into the good work that they're already doing. We felt as we got into that, we were verging into territory that's being covered off. We just understood the gap between the potential supporters of FCSS services. We identified that as a gap based on the fact that a majority of the 8 of us didn't really understand the things, and Judy helped us understand.
And I guess the other point was that we don't want to duplicate the services, so we don't want to then go and implement another person or another department that can do what FCSS is already doing. It's all about communicating and engaging what they're doing and getting it out there in a bigger way as to what FCSS is doing.
So if I may follow up that quickly, Your Worship, are you thinking of the print media to put ads into the paper, featuring FCSS? Are you thinking of doing, let's say, a fair where FCS is prominent? I'm just wondering, because we struggle with this all the time with our citizens. People say, you're not getting the message out, you're not getting the message out. And yet this is the day and age where there's more mediums to get the message out than there was 20 years ago. And people say we're not getting it out. So if you can tell me how you plan to get it out, I'm interested.
Okay.
Thank you, Your Worship.
Thanks for the question. Just, I think, first of all, just your phrasing on the question is a little bit odd to me, how we're planning to get it out. I think that our work is done here with tonight, and our recommendation is simply that council be aware that yeah, we have some lack of understanding of what FCSS does in the community, and that's important for that to be advanced, and using council's communication tools and working with FCSS for that is your job, not ours.
Councilor Bennett?
Then for our job.
Councilor Bennett?
I'll just add my aha moment in this, in the discussions that we had. I was amazed that 8 out of how many of our community members sitting on this task force did not know about FCSS. So I have to say I had a little bit of a meltdown. But this was my aha moment. To me, the people who utilize FCSS, who need FCSS, they know about FCSS because of the partnerships and because of the organizations that FCSS works with. And so the people who need it, I fully believe that they know about it. So, and then in my mind, I was like, so who cares if our community members doesn't know about it? My aha moment was, of course it matters, because these are the people who will support it. These are the people who will talk about FCSS and what their programs do and get involved financially. I know that several people on our committee started working with FCSS as volunteers with the youth center, with Christmas hampers, and some of those things that they weren't aware of, but they didn't need the services, but they need to support it. And so I thought that was really interesting, and that was a big educational moment for me.
Thank you. Councilor Matthews?
Through to our guests, and I just want to make a comment with regards to Councillor Bennett. Yeah, I really appreciate what you're saying, because I do think we have to market our great organizations in this community when an event is put on, to make sure that people are aware of who put it on, and that, it's such an important thing to do. With regards to my question, it's regarding page 27 of page 42, and it's regarding the fact that volunteers regularly, that they're not volunteering regularly due to time constraints. And you give a couple of examples. Women are working busier. Parents are more interested in volunteering if it involves their children. And, so the examples are such that or the last one is that people are working outside of the community and so are not here to volunteer. Did you gain any insight as to recommendations flowing out of that, how we could better structure volunteerism in our community so that more people could be, or are there other suggestions that flow from that?
One of the recommendations on the Neighbors' Day was really getting the community at large to understand who their neighbors are. And we believe by them becoming friends and understanding those on the street, that the engagement will change and people will want to get involved. I believe that many of the citizens that work in Edmonton, because they come home and they drive in their garage and they go and do their thing. Neighbor Day was the opportunity to get those people out, meet their neighbors, and then understand what those services are, such as FCSS and other support groups.
I think part of it too is having a multitude of different opportunities for people to volunteer. What we found very interesting is when Brett from Engaged City Church came to talk about it, what was interesting is we were finding that maybe the younger generation isn't volunteering. And what he was telling us is that he is able to get the younger generation to volunteer more so than the older generations. So we found that really fascinating. And so he told us some of his reasons is because he has the on and off ramps. So he gives people an option to volunteer, but they don't have to volunteer. He gives them short-term volunteer opportunities instead of long-term opportunities. He gives them exciting things to volunteer in. So they're becoming very engaged in their church because of the atmosphere of their church. It's all about being engaged. We found that some of our volunteers want to volunteer with the pets. Like anything to do with rescues or dog shelters. They have an abundance of volunteers. And then we're also finding that we've got organizations like the seniors who, like some of the churches and stuff are having or the service groups, they have an abundance of older generations that are volunteering, and yet they want to embrace getting more of the younger generation to volunteer. And we find that the younger generation is volunteering in different ways. So, for example, they're going to Brett Church, where it's very engaging for them. They're volunteering in their own ways, where they're doing social media stuff. They're very focused on social media. You want to get a younger generation, you embrace the social media. You want to get the older generations involved, you have to embrace the traditional media. We still have to do newspaper, word of mouth, signage. We had a ton of discussion about communication, and are we doing enough? Or we seem like we're putting everything out there, and yet people are still not hearing it. It seems like they're tuning out. And the reason they're tuning out is because they have such busy lifestyles. Most people work outside of the community. They come home, they've got to do their stuff with their kids and their sports and that sort of thing, and they just don't have the time. A lot of people are just getting so burnt out. So they're finding other ways to volunteer, and they don't necessarily know that they're volunteering, but they are. For example, when they go to the casino and they have to volunteer for their child's, soccer team or something like that, they're volunteering, right? So there's not one approach that's going to solve everything. We can't just go and say, okay, we're going to put all our effort into social media, and that's the only way that we're going to get our community to engage. It's not going to work because some of our older generation is still not embracing social media. So we still have to do it all. Whether we like it or not, that's the bottom line, is we have to continue to do it all. There was a time when we didn't have to embrace social media because we didn't have it. But if you want that younger generation, you got to embrace the social media.
Thank you. Councillor Meyer, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you to our guests, first I'd like to say thank you guys for spending all the time coming out and working on this very broad subject, you know, and I think we did a very effective, and you guys did a very effective job of coming up with practical solutions to, like what I say is a very broad sort of, you could get bogged down in all the details, and I know a lot of our conversations we often did. And in that regard, I think we spent a lot of time discussing the role that ambassadors would be playing. And so my question is to you guys, where do we intend to find these knowledgeable citizens that will be willing to be ambassadors?
Did you want to answer that? Okay. Well, we also had a lot of discussion about that too. How do we implement Neighbor Day? How do we implement the ambassador program? Because that, of course, is the big question. So we believe that Neighbor Day should be in September 2019, after school starts. Okay, so we believe that we could implement a Neighbor Day in that respect. As far as the ambassador program, you might be able to convince some of us on the task force to be volunteers and, you know, implement it. You know, again, it's also about who are those strong leaders? You know, who are those strong church members? Who are those strong service club members? We want to get all of them involved. We want to have regular times where they meet, maybe it's quarterly, and the service clubs can get up and say, okay, we have this event going on, we have this event going on. You know, we want FCSS to be a big part of it and say, look, this is what we have going on, this is what we're doing, this is how we can support you, and let's get community members involved that say, I want to step up and volunteer. We know we're doing it. I've seen all four of you council members on Saturday going around to, you guys all had 3 events that you were going to on Saturday. So you guys are already ambassadors. And so now it's just engaging some citizens in our town that are willing to also take on that role. And I don't believe we should just leave it to one generation. I believe we need to have it as part of all of our generations. So if we want to get lots of social media stuff happening, we have to have people like Mackenzie, who is on our task force, is the millennial generation who totally embraces doing Facebook Lives, you know, who's able to just, you know, go gangbusters with the social media part. We need those people in the older generation who we have like, sorry, I'm having a brain block, sorry. You know, and sorry, and she has, you know, she's part of a local walking club, and, you know, she gets out like 2, 3, 4 times a week, who's throughout the whole community and telling people about our walking club and all the projects that she's involved in. You know, we've got Russ here, who's involved in the local churches, who's doing all kinds of community things, and, you know, we've got, oh my gosh, what the heck? John, who's in the business community, right? We've also got Lori, who's involved in, you know, different community projects that she's involved in. She told me, like, she's not going to be home once this week, tonight, because, in the evening, because she's so involved in the community. So it's all about getting engaged citizens. And as we get more solid people who know what's going on in the community, we're going to have an even more fantastic community. You want to say?
Sure. Just to add a little bit, thanks, Kelly. Just the ambassadors is an important thing, but I think one of our most important recommendations is about having the Neighbor Day. And one of the things that we talked a lot about along the way that didn't get a lot of highlighting in the report is, as you're aware, we have grown a lot as a community. And the newer members of the community are not as engaged in the community. They need to be made to be welcome. They need to be made to feel like they're neighbors and that they care about their neighbors because their neighbors care about them. So this is a very important thing. that we need to really develop. And yeah, who is my neighbor is a question that was asked of Jesus, and it was pretty much everybody. Yeah. So, but not everybody's got that figured out yet. So we have to help them figure that out.
Thank you. Councilor Plechko?
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. We'll refer to page 28 of 42, and I'd like to thank you all for doing a great job that you've done. It's great to see the report. However, I do have a question. Going down to the very bottom of the page, there are more resources available to organizations and volunteers now more than ever before. However, bringing awareness to these resources is where the challenge lies. With 42% of the respondents not utilizing municipal services, and I'm going to stop it there. You go on to name one organization that you continue to break down throughout the thing. What about the other portion that you looked at that is not in the report? So, with 42% of the respondents not utilizing municipal service such as FCSS, what other ones such as FCSS did you look at? And why are they not part of the report that gives us a broader spectrum of what could be utilized within the community? I didn't mean to stump
point out what section that's under?
Yeah, it's page 28 of 42, right at the very bottom, that goes into the top of 29.
They don't have that.
Oh, okay, page 6 and 7.
You want to talk about that?
Goes on to say it is obvious that the root cause to this problem is derived from a lack of awareness. So if it is FCSS that is also a lack of awareness, what other organizations is it a lack of awareness for our community? So,
go ahead, Councilor Meyer.
I'm not sure if this will answer your question, Councillor, but I think what was being referenced there is what we found was we had come up with solutions, and we were quickly found that FCSS was actually already offering that service. And so when we focused in on this FCSS, it's because they already do so much to support volunteers in our community, and so maybe this is what we're referring to here.
Okay. I think I'm hearing your question. I was trying to figure out what this is about. The such as is maybe not the happiest or best choice of language, but yeah, what Councillor Myers says is very much to the point. What we're talking about is that there's help available for organizations with their volunteers that FCSS has in place, but the organizations don't know about that. So it's probably generally across the board, a lot of organizations probably don't even know that FCSS has a volunteer coordinator. And that's one thing that we think should be more widely known in the community too. It's not just people that need FCSS for social services. There's communities or there's organizations that need help with their volunteerism and volunteer building and whatnot. And FCSS is doing that, but they don't know. So that's kind of what that was about, I think, more than that there were other organizations that we were talking about.
Right. Right, does that answer your question? I think it was, the sentence was for organizations such as other community groups, as NeighborLink, food banks, and all that stuff, and the volunteers that want to get involved in the community, that we do have a lot of resources, and that's offered by Stony Plain FCSS that does these programs in terms of coordinated volunteerism, grant writing, community engagement. So they offer all these programs, what these nations that are saying that they're losing and sort of slowly declining because of the lack of volunteerism, that they haven't found FCSS that actually is trying to promote that. We're saying like these organizations need to get to know what FCSS does so that they can piggyback and use those services. Councilor Lowry.
Through you, so a little bit of an interesting question that came up for me as I read through the report and listened to the presentation tonight. And one thing that you've been very key to identify is that there's been a priority shift in volunteerism and how people volunteer has changed. But also throughout the report, it states in two different places. One, it states through FCSS's work, they are showing there is actually no decrease in volunteerism. And in another area, you're showing that just under 50% of the groups surveyed are actually showing an increase in volunteerism. So the question that I have that comes from that then is, how urgent is our need to increase volunteerism within the community?
I think one of the points that you need to start with for the urgency is that still a lot of the organizations are reporting that most of their volunteers are in my age category. And those volunteers are going to disappear over the next 20 years. Probably a lot of them over the next 10. So that's an impending possible crisis if there's not more young volunteers brought on stream. And yeah, there's a lot of volunteerism going on right now. My generation is, a lot of us have time and can do it, but that doesn't last. And unless volunteerism is really instilled in the younger generation, that may not be the case with the next group of seniors that come along.
Further comment. This task force was about volunteerism and community engagement. And so while we started, we believed that there weren't enough volunteers. Our research showed that in many cases there are enough volunteers, not throughout, but in many cases. The urgency is around the community engagement component of this, because the long-term success of these organizations relies on community engagement. And so I think there is strong urgency on doing something for that.
Very glad to hear that point. That leads me into the next question that I have. I absolutely love the Neighbor Day concept. I've done a little bit of work into what they've done in Calgary. I think it's fantastic, and I cannot wait to see something like that come into our community because, as you said, I think community engagement, getting to know your neighbor, etc., is an absolute fantastic one. I do want to ask a question about the Community Ambassador Program. The Community Ambassador Program was done a few years ago with Community Futures. The Chamber was a partner, so on and so forth, here in town. And unfortunately, it was incredibly unsuccessful. So I'm curious as to if there was any investigation into that past program, why it wasn't successful, what lessons were learned from it, and how the program that you're proposing may differ from that.
We did not, we were not aware of that, and we certainly didn't do any research. We believe the success of the ambassador program could be springboarded from the Neighbor Days, that those ambassadors that would be selected by you would also be organizers for the community barbecues, which would be the start of them understanding what their role is, and for the community to understand their value.
Okay. Good. Thank you. Councillor Bennett?
Some wrap-up comments, so I'll just wait until all the questions are done.
Okay. Councillor Matties?
Your Worship, this is my last question. With regards to Stony Plain, having a website that would allow all the organizations to provide information regarding exciting volunteer opportunities in this community. Would that be something that you think would be utilized, or can you give some advice on that?
Yes, actually, there is a link.
Well, we believe that the town of Stony Plain has a great website, and that was the interesting thing about it, is that we have this stuff available. It's just that people are not knowledgeable enough to know that it exists or to use it.
Okay.
Yes. So FCSS does have a link that lists all the volunteer opportunities and all the organizations that are looking for volunteers. But again, people don't know about FCSS to connect them to that point. And that's what one of the comments were, is that we have all these tools here, but not a lot of people know where to get them from. So I think that's just awareness of what FCSS offers.
Sure, but Your Worship, with regards to, for example, the Youth Center or the Pioneer Museum or a number of other organizations in our community, do they access that as well? Because I don't think that they do.
Okay, I'm not too sure because I haven't been on that link. Does the director know who's on that list? Yeah.
if they want to. Yeah, I have this feeling that, for example, the Pioneer Museum may not be using it, and maybe there's opportunities we can work on that.
Right. And I think that's one of the recommendations from the task force is that that there is a lack of awareness of the services and programs offered by FCSS to support these organizations. Okay. Councilor Bennett, I guess you go back to you then. Okay. Any other questions, comments? Oh, go ahead.
Okay, so I just wanted to thank you, Mr. Mayor, for appointing me to this mayor's task force. Out of all of the people that were selected to sit on this task force, I knew two beforehand. Everyone else was new to me, and to be honest, I was new to everyone else. They didn't know who they'd heard of Councillor Bennett, but they'd never met me. And so I think that was a big awareness right there. So I thank them, and what I discovered about this group is that they are doers and not necessarily philosophers. So they want to get in there, they want to get their hands dirty, they want to do things. But the three of us kind of caution them. You are not going to solve these problems. You are not going to build the ambassador program. You are not going to build the Neighbor Day, even though they wanted to. They were ready to organize the whole thing. So our recommendations, and I think that Russ said it really well. Their job is done, basically. This was their assignment, and they've done it. Now they're turning it over to our administration, and they're turning it back to us to say, this is what we recommend. Now, what are you guys going to do about it? I just want to emphasize, though, that no matter what we do, it is with FCSS. Because I believe a lot of these things that we've been talking about, FCSS already does them or plans to do them. The community dinners that have been planned, that's Neighbor Day to me. That's Neighbor Day 4 times a year. People getting together. So, FCSS is already so involved in this that if I were our administration, which I'm not, but I would say, let's work with FCSS because they're already starting down the path of how these things work. It's getting their message out that we need to do. And I think the community ambassadors and the Neighbor Day, those things are all speaking of how loudly word of mouth works. So no matter what else we do, when somebody says, what? I didn't hear about that, it's because somebody else hasn't talked to them. And that's what they need to do. If they have a question about volunteerism, if I had a question about volunteerism, I wouldn't go to the website. I would ask somebody. I would be at an event and I would say, oh, I hadn't heard about that. So I think that is a message that needs to come across loud and clear and to keep reverberating. We need to talk to people and get this public engagement, this citizen engagement, continuing to try new things and to just keep moving on that. And Mr. Mayor, I just have to say how wonderful these people were to work with. I mean, Mackenzie put in so much time and energy into this report. I know the poor girl lost sleep over the whole thing. Kelly and Lori have been working diligently on this PowerPoint, and and I just have to say that Jim really set the foundation for how we were going to present this information, and I can't stress enough, how important he was to this committee. Russ and John, I didn't really know John before. Now I've got him connected with all kinds of things. So, I think that it was, for me, it was very beneficial, and I thank you, Mr. Mayor, for appointing me to this committee.
Thank you. Councillor Meyer?
Oh, I get to wrap up as well. Well, thank you as well for appointing. I mean, I don't think I can put it quite as well as Councillor Bennett did. I do know I learned a lot. I learned how to work in committee, how to write by committee. That was an interesting experience that I hadn't had before. I would also like to speak about Jim. I didn't know him before, but a number of, I think of actually after our first meeting, Jim and I sat outside in the freezing cold there for an hour, just continuing sort of more of the great conversations we had that evening. And it was of value, and I think what we're working on here is as well. I think we found, like I said before, very practical, cost-effective, doable, reach anybody across any generation or medium that they like to use, and it'll be a benefit to this community. And again, I'd like to thank you guys all for allowing me to participate in that.
Well, I'd like to also thank you guys for choosing us, because I know we've had a few conversations where we thought maybe we would just got on the committee because there wasn't anybody else applying. And so, I know, John, you and I talked about this too. We heard that there was 20 applicants and we were the chosen ones. And so we thought we just got on because there wasn't enough people. So, it really has been an honor being on this committee and, on this task force and, coming up with some conclusions for you guys. And, we hope that you guys implement them. And I know, as far as I'm concerned, I'm certainly willing to get involved in a bigger way. And so, I'm pretty sure I can speak for behalf of all of us that, we're interested in seeing the future with this project.
Thank you. So just members of council, if I can direct you to the initial pages of the report, and that lists the 8 members that were chosen to fill the positions on the task force. As you can see, the task force is actually a cross-section of our community. We have young, we have old, we have people that have lived here all their lives, we have people that are just new to the community, and we even have people that are not part of the community but are vested in our community and want to be part of it, which is very, very a cosmism of what we are as a community in Stony Plain. We have a whole group of people that want to make it better. And through the task force, we figured, looking at the task force on volunteerism and community engagement, they go hand in hand. As our population continues to grow and our technology kind of grows with us, that connectedness to our peers and our residents become less and less. With technology, we're more connected to everyone else that is not in this room. Right? And that's one of the biggest things that we saw, that we may feel connected, but we're not. And the recommendations coming forward from the task force was suggestions of how to get that connectivity back, where we can sit there face to face to engage each other. And with community engagement, that along will come volunteerism, because people want to do and volunteer for things that their friends and family are doing. When you're connected to people across the world through social media, well, you can't volunteer with them because they're doing something else halfway across the world. But when you're connected with and engaged with our local community, you want to volunteer here, you want to be here. And each one of the 8 individuals that were chosen have shown that. There's a sense of community in this community. They want to build it. We even have an honorary member, which her name is not here, but it is Brenda, if you just wave. Brenda was one of the first community groups that we actually talked to and had the discussion with. She found it so fulfilling and worthwhile, she decided to give up her life and come sit in on these meetings with us. So that shows you the amount of engagement that we have in our community. And we all mentioned Jim. I did not know Jim until I read his application and got to talk to him and saw the man's dedication and commitment to the community, what he's done throughout his entire residency in Stony Plain, all the volunteer work that he's got into. And then coming back in his golden years, wanted to dedicate some of that experience and knowledge to the community to help build it. That is what I really value, like coming out of this task force, is the community engagement part of it. As a community, if we want to succeed, we need that engagement. And that engagement is not through all the channels that we've talked about, but it's that face-to-face networking, the neighbors meeting neighbors, where when you walk down the street, you know at least 4 or 5 people that you can say hi to and you talk to. And that's how you get the awareness of about FCSS. You get the awareness of talk about the Pioneer Museum, the Multicultural Center, the other events that are happening in town. That has greater impact on attendance and volunteering works than just having some advertising going on. And hopefully that this council and this administration can read into those documents and provides those opportunities for our community to connect again, to form those relationships that build a strong community. So members of the community, on behalf of council and our community, thank you for your work. The work that you have done will go a long ways to keep Stony Plain where it is, as a community that cares about its people, that focuses on building what a family should look like, with all different aspects, but a family that's engaged, that knows each other, and that's willing to help each other. So on behalf of our council and administration, thank you very much. And I think members of the task force wanted a picture with members of council, so if I can get all task force members to come forward and we'll take a picture. We're just going to stand. Yeah, we'll stand back here. Yeah. I'm asking.
Are we standing here or are we standing down there? Because there's that task force.
You're still
right in the middle where William stands, okay? But don't stand in front of me because you're still taller.
Well, for sure not.
Judy still might need to stand in the chair.
I'm a tall guy. I'm the tall old guy. I'm the tall old guy. Yeah, the old guy. That's me. The older generation. Russ, you guys down in front of me. I can't see over.
We made him stand there specifically. Where's your stool?
Down there.
Sorry.
Ask to take one more.
Thank you very much. Well, if you want to invite everybody to the library after.
Okay.
Hey. Thank you, guys.
The library at the
Hey, what time did that? Okay. Council, that completes our presentations for today, and moving on to our agenda is number 5, which is business items. So 5.1, there is actually a business item to direct administration to bring back a report. So if I have a motion, please, Councillor Meyer.
Thank you, Your Worship. I make a motion that the Mayor's Task Force, the Town Council, 1, accept the Mayor's Task Force report for information, and 2, direct administration to bring a follow-up implementation report to the June 24th, 2019 regular council meeting.
Okay. Thank you, Councillor Meyer. Members of council, if you've had the report, we had some good conversations and discussion around that. Any questions or comments regarding the motion that's put on the floor? Councillor Laurie.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you to administration, given the amount of information provided tonight in respect with the coordination recommended with FCSS on this work, I'm curious as to if this information should go to FCSS first and potentially to have FCSS present to council what their capacity and capabilities would be to fulfill some of the requests. Or if administration can shed some light, does administration feel that these recommendations are something that they would like to bring forward themselves with FCSS as a partner?
Your Worship, a couple brief comments, I guess, about the report itself and the recommendations contained. So the council may or may not have been aware, but we had been tracking and attending and understanding, where the report was heading and so on. So we did have, call what you want, a heads up or, an understanding of what was going to be recommended in advance. So there has been some thought and conversation put into that already. So in specific, Your Worship, with Councillor Lorry's question regarding FCSS, I do believe the intent for myself anyway for the June 24th would be to have a good discussion with FCSS, the executive director, in advance of that, and to ensure that the report that we're tabling is either aligned with, or in conjunction with, or supported by, or whatever you want to call it, with FCSS. So I don't know what that would look like exactly on June 24th, but Your Worship, the intent would be that it's coming forward in some form of a joint submission, if you want to call it that, presentation.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Any other questions, comments?
Your Worship, further, just very quickly on that, and the council may recall that there was some money set aside, in advance of anticipated recommendations of sort, and that will factor into part of the report coming in on June 24th as well. How those funds could be allocated or so on and so forth. But there was some put aside in the corporate planning process in anticipation of the report from the Mayor's Task Force.
Okay, thank you. I see no more hands up. So before I call the motion, I just want to make sure to recognize the administrative support staff that we had working with the task force. Christina, she's in the back there. She kept us on task, and she did a lot of good note keeping, so that when we went back and argued about who said what, she had the notes written down of who was there and who said what, so it made us our task a little easier. So thank you very much, Christina, for being there. Okay, so with that, thank you, Councillor Meyer, for the motion. I'll call the question. All in favor? Okay, and that's carried. Moving on to information items and council discussion. We'll move to, let's go with Councillor Matties.
I've been away for the last 5 days in Penticton, but I did share today with council at our strategic planning that I had been in a community that, because the prices are quite high in Penticton for properties, that they were looking at ways to have more affordable housing. And one of them was, it was actually on Indian land, and then you didn't buy the land, or that wasn't the part of the value of the property. It was using a housing structure that, what's the name of the housing structure again? The modular homes, yes. So it allowed an individual to buy a property at a lower value than what would be traditionally available in the community. And then they would pay a lease payment. And it was kind of interesting how I looked at that as to the 3 Robins that we have in the community, where again, you're paying rent. It allows an individual to have a very good lifestyle and a nice involvement in the community, but not having to put in a large amount of money in terms of a down payment for a house, but being able to rent. So just looking at options like that for a community, and I know we have some already like that, and continuing to do that so that we ensure that our community is a great place to live.
Okay, thank you very much. Deputy Mayor.
Nothing this evening, Your Worship.
Thank you. Councillor Pletchko.
I'm going to join Mr. Lloyd tonight and have nothing.
Thank you. Councillor Lowry.
Thank you, Your Worship. I second this.
Thank you. Councillor Bennett.
I thought you forgot me for a minute there. First of all, I just I wanted to ask a question. I was talking to the Lions Club this weekend, and I'm curious as to where their expansion is, and and what the process is. We're coming very, very quickly to RV season, and they want the expansion on their park, and I believe they've worked towards getting the papers in, but is there, where are they in that process?
Your Worship, through to Councillor Bennett. So the last time I was in the room with the Lions, excuse me, the Lions Club and the planning team, we were looking at some plans that they had for potential expansion. Town of Stony Plain and the Lions Club have a lease site that's been approved, and there are lands that they're free and able, following municipal, provincial, and federal law, to upgrade and build on. So they did have a plan that identified some lands outside of that space, and we identified and communicated to them that they would need to come back to council with the plan related to any lands outside of that space that has already been committed to them, to gauge whether or not council was interested in a continued partnership in lands that have not been identified in the current agreement. So it was identified that whether council chose to expand the lease area or potentially look at a cost implication to the potential lands were some of the options that we provided them as potential after a conversation in the chambers related to future expansion of the site that's not encapsulated within the lands in the agreement that we currently hold with them.
Okay, so it's still in process.
Your Worship, through to Councillor Bennett, my understanding is yes, and my understanding is they were moving towards expanding as much as they could on the current lease site.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Mayor, I just also wanted to talk a little bit about Jane's Walk that we did yesterday, and thanks to Diane Duncan and her husband, and to Chelsea from our planning department who led that walk. The first year, I think this was our 4th year, the first year we had 7 people. The second year, maybe 5. It was bad weather. Last year we had a few more. And this year we had probably 20, 25 people that joined us for the walk and shared their stories and their memories of Stony Plain. I learned more from a young man. He says he lives in Edmonton now, but his wife and his tiny baby were out for the walk, and he grew up here, and he was telling me things about our downtown and about our town that I didn't know. So it's a walk that I've always enjoyed because we talk about our community place, and it combines with our urban planning and what we can do to enhance our residents living here. And I always learn something new. So thanks, Diane, and for organizing that. Also, this weekend, Mr. Mayor, is, and I was looking up the right term for it and couldn't find my tickets. The Westview Tricala, yes, is having their fundraiser this weekend. Sorry guys, it's a ladies' night out, and it's a fashion show, and I went last year, and really it's quite successful. So they may have lost or downsized one of their events, which was the Festival of the Trees, but this group, this Westview Health and Wellness, they're resilient, and they've come up with a couple other ways to raise money, and this is for Westview Hospital and to enhance some of the equipment that we have there. So Councillor Matties and I and a group of friends are all going to go together, so don't wait up for us.
Thank you for sharing that. Councillor Meyer?
I'll take a pass, thank you.
Thank you. And again, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for reading and being prepared for council meetings. Administration, thank you for your work. Again, all the presentations were very informative. And just FYI, this Wednesday is McHappy Day, so if you signed up, we'll see you there. Well, different shifts to raise money for Ronald McDonald House. Thursday is also the Pioneer Civic Luncheon, so if you sign up for that, you'll be there. I won't be there, so say my regrets. And Friday is the pedestrian parade that we'll be walking in terms with the students that are from the Parkland School Division to raise awareness on mental health issues. And Saturday is the emergency preparedness event that's happening at our Heritage Park. So it's between 1 and 2. If you have a chance, stop down and take a look at that. And again, Sunday is Mother's Day. Make sure you give your mom a hug or just think about her if your mom's passed, because remember, without your mom, you won't be here. So I love you, Mom. Okay. And with that, it is adjourned. Thank you, guys.